I would like to welcome all of you this morning. My name is Jason Bliss, and I am the Executive Director of Washington Association for Quality Recovery Residents. And today I will be your moderator here on this panel. During today's webinar, we're going to talk about effective supervision of house managers, also known as peer leaders. By definition, housing peer leaders work collaboratively with residents and program staff to aid in the successful transition into a housing program model. They serve as role models, advocates, and knowledgeable guides to not only new residents, but to those who have been in a program for a while. In addition, peer leaders assist with residents with recovery strategies. They can help identify recovery resources and activities, and help residents acclimate to the recovery community as a whole. Today, you will hear a wide variety of things that work in some of our recovery residences here in Washington State. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined by some wonderful panelists who all are very knowledgeable on this topic. Joining me today is Travis Gannon. Travis is the director and founder of Hands Up Housing. He is located in Everett, Washington. Also joining me today is Sarah Weavedo. She is the director of Faith House at New Earth Recovery, located in Mount Vernon, Washington. Today, I'm also joined by Steve Simpson. He is the general manager at Truly Motivated Transitional Living, located up in Yelm, Washington. Just a few housekeeping things that I want to go over before we get started. If you guys have questions and such that come up as we go along, go ahead and place them in the chat window, and I will do my best as time permits to get them read to our panelists so we can get all of them answered. Please forgive me, this is my first time using this, not Zoom as a whole, but this Zoom platform. If you're able to, please keep yourself muted until your question is called on or is your turn to speak. This panel and webinar that we're doing today here is being recorded and will be available for anyone to be able to view at a later time up on the WAQRR website. With that being said, I'm going to start with a few questions. I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. And again, as I said, I'm sure a lot of you will have questions as we go along. Just go ahead and place those in the chat, and we will go from there. Travis, the first question and first topic, I'll go ahead and turn over to you. Travis, what is the responsibility of peer leaders in your home within your housing model?
Yeah, Jason. So we've got three levels of kind of house oversight with our organization. We've got a general manager position that oversees all the properties that we have. We've got 4 sober houses and about 40 beds in Snohomish County. So he runs my day-to-day operations with the house managers themselves and the assistant managers. And then within our homes, we've got a primary house manager in each house, and then we have also got an assistant manager. And really what we're looking for out of those positions, I put together job descriptions. I can share my screen with you guys really quick on, oh, it's disabled. I basically, for me, I can share my screen once, Jason, if you can allow it. I can kind of go through each role that I personally have set up with our team. But for me, particularly with the house manager position, the assistant house manager position, it's a service position at the end of the day. And for those of you in the recovery community can understand that we do compensate with a little bit of rent breaks and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're looking for people that are walking the walk and doing recovery to the best of their ability. So with that, we go through really our house managers' key roles is to maintain a solid program of recovery. That's their biggest thing. They need to make meetings. They need to be example for new residents. Our house managers manage intake for new residents. They do nightly house walks, drug screenings, manage our weekly house meeting, manage our weekly chore list, communicate any needs to the general manager and myself. They look for problems or changes in behavior with residents. We try to get ahead of issues that we may have. They manage discharges as well. And then we make sure that they attend certification and training classes such as recovery coach training, naloxone training. I do Excel and Microsoft Office training and any other applicable trainings. I think the biggest thing for us, for me is, I'm not looking for tyrants. I need people with good intercommunication skills. I'm not looking for somebody to rule the house with an iron fist. It's a collaborative effort between all of us. We want our residents to feel like their voices are heard and have the opportunity to give us feedback. But those are pretty much the responsibilities of our house manager. And then I have different responsibilities for our assistant house manager and general manager as well.
I thank you, Travis. Steve, what are some of the responsibility of peer leaders within your specific housing model?
Well, for here at Truly Motivated, it's very similar to what Travis is describing. What they do is they maintain, make sure people are home on time before at curfew, managing UA schedules and making sure they're done on time. We UA anytime anybody comes back from overnight, and we UA weekly. So they handle that. They make sure chores are done daily. Make sure they're keeping the rooms clean, keeping their bed made, things like that. Then cleaning up after themselves. With us, it's not about, kind of like Travis is talking about. We look for people who don't want to roll with a heavy hand. They just want to help, and they want to support, and they want to be there for people and support their housemates and help them grow and learn how to be responsible in that manner. Because we all know people coming from the streets and treatment from jail and prison, a lot of times they don't really understand how to keep the room clean or clean up after themselves, do a lot of that general housekeeping stuff. So it's walking alongside of them and helping them understand that stuff and learn those procedures and policies.
Thank you, Steve. Sarah, what are some of the responsibilities that may differ a little bit from the individuals that are in some of your homes?
Sure. I think in addition to a lot of the good things that have been said, there's a real emphasis put on presence, just for our ministry as a whole. Like we see it as so much a ministry of presence, and that something happens when relationship is happening, and that people are always being invited to engage more deeply. They're being encouraged, they're being challenged, they're being having an example set for them. And so I always describe the house assistant role, which is what we call it. I really like the language of assistant versus manager, just because it has that implication of service, like we're talking about, instead of like the top down, I'm here to manage you. And so, yeah, just inherent in it is, the way I describe it is that you're a bridge, and a bridge between staff and residents, particularly when we're not around. That it's such a gift to know that there is a pair of eyes just on things, and offering that level, an added level of just kind of accountability, as well as just care and presence. If someone needs someone to talk to, that they're a trustworthy person, an approachable person. And yeah, and just that they value not only working their own strong recovery personally, but that they want to participate in house recreational activities and even help initiate those sometimes, and are fun makers and community builders and people who want to treat this like a family and not an institution, and cultivate that kind of culture.
Yes, that's very true within all of the housing models, for them to instill the aspect of a home environment rather than an institution. Travis, jumping back to you, do you have planned meetings with your peer leaders on a regular basis? And what do those meetings look like? What are some of the topics that you cover?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. So we do. We have weekly meetings. So basically, every Monday, we have a weekly manager meeting with each of the house managers, and basically, what we do is we sit down with that house manager. We go over all the notes. We've got a form that we fill out on our weekly house meeting. We want to celebrate successes, milestones, employment. We want to highlight opportunities for employment in the community. We want to make sure that chores are getting completed, give the residents an opportunity to have some dialogue about their living situation, things that they'd like to see different, things that are going well. So we review all that with our house managers on Monday and see what action steps are needed by us by myself and my general manager. So that's the first thing. Second thing that we do is any new contracts that came out, housing contracts, we review the intake process. And then we do a house walk with each manager on a weekly basis. And basically, we just do room checks, have some conversations with residents, make sure that, they have what they're needing, make sure that the rooms are up to a standard of living, which, we want to maintain as people in recovery. We want to have we have conversations about any disciplinary issues that need to have, happen. We highlight successes. We make sure that we get, if there's a milestone or a birthday, we make sure that we have coins and a cake ready for that end of the month meeting. And then any other house topics that manager wants to bring up to my staff and myself. And those are pretty much our weekly checklist, as well as, the last piece of that is just making sure that we're communicating with our referral agencies if we have any discharges, whether, a positive housing exit or a negative housing exit. And that's pretty much how our weekly meeting goes with each manager.
Awesome. Thank you, Travis. Sarah, I'll jump over to you with the same question. Do you, within your guys' housing organization, do you guys hold planned meetings, and do you guys kind of have an agenda in a punch list of things that you cover for each week concerning your residents and how the house and such is being ran?
So we do also do it weekly at a time when both staff members can be present with the house assistant, and it's really a check-in. Sometimes it will be more kind of formal. Sometimes it's just a shorter kind of any latest, because we really try to encourage the house assistants to let there be ongoing kind of dialogue and information sharing, and that they don't need to save it all up for the meeting. And so sometimes we've had some good conversations during the week. We have a pretty good feel of what's happening in the house. Maybe I need to update you, or someone's on contract. So, we need some extra eyes on this, extra accountability around something. But in general, our hope is that can be a time to cover anything we haven't had a chance to cover during the week, and especially because it's the three of us in our staffing situation. But we also really try to encourage there being like smaller meetings, smaller check-ins that are less formal, in a way that really helps things not stack up too much, and just that we're present enough for those to be able to happen, which is something I'm really grateful for. So I think that's what I'd add.
Awesome. Steve, I'll start with the next question and pose this one to you. When you're out looking for a peer leader, either for a new home or when a peer leader is transitioning out and you're trying to select a new one, what are some of the things that you look to identify in your new peer leaders?
Well, in that instance, what we do is the main thing we're looking for is somebody's one is working a really solid recovery program, is doing really well while living with us, doing with programming and following policies and doing really well, but also somebody who wants to be a part of and help and likes helping others. We look for somebody who has that compassion for other addicts, that compassion for not really just leadership, but also just being that guidance for people, and is willing to be accountability to the rest of the residents. Because really, at the end of the day, those folks are really engrossed with these other residents because they're in the home with them. So we need them to, be willing to be, one, responsible, two, be compassionate about where that person might be at as they're moving into the house, or maybe they're looking towards transition, or maybe they're halfway through the program here, then they're having a rough day. They got to be able to sit down with them, have a conversation with them, and help them walk through whatever they're walking through. But also hold them accountable to, hey, I need you to get your chore done. I know you haven't done the chore. I know you didn't make your bed today. And do it in a manner of where it's coming from a peer of, hey, this is kind of what we do here. We need to work on this and tighten it up. I understand it might be a little hard for you because it's new for you, but let's work on this. I'll walk you through it and I'll help you with it until you can get to where a point where it becomes part of your day. So it's really looking for somebody who believes in themselves, but also believes in other individuals, and then believes in the program that they're working and that they're living, and wants to be able to show that to somebody else and help guide somebody else through that.
Thank you, Steve. Sarah, are there any additional traits, or are there any prerequisites that you guys look for within your housing model? And I'm rather new to this side of housing. I have years of experience working with housing, but the type of housing I was with Oxford House previously, and that was strictly ran on a democratic process through the individuals there in the home. When you guys are looking for a house manager or a peer to assist you with the management, is them being having like a peer-to-peer support specialist, being accredited in Washington State by that, or being a recovery coach? Are those some of the prerequisites that you may look for, or is there any, or are there any other prerequisites that Steve hasn't covered that you guys might take into account in consideration?
Yeah, I mean, Travis mentioned making those kinds of trainings available to people, which is another thing that state as one of the benefits is that this is a chance for you to grow in leadership. We don't, because we're pretty grassroots, we don't see there necessarily needing to be a lot as far as experience that they bring to the table, but more kind of who they are and who they would like to be in the position, I think feels most important to us. I'm a big fan of the unlikely leader. I'm very aware that I've gone into interviews thinking that I knew who was going to be the one that we chose, and being surprised and delighted by who sort of rose to the occasion, and like the quieter person who says, I want to work on asserting myself in healthy ways, versus the person who's the natural born leader, where everyone just thinks, oh yeah, they're going to be the next one. Why are we even doing the interviews? And then they don't end up getting it. But it's an opportunity really to, I think, develop the natural leader people who think almost that they deserve the position because they've been a leader everywhere they've gone, to say, hey, we need people like you on the ground floor too. And you don't need a title to live out that gifting that you have, where some of these people who have never been in a position to be a leader end up being some of our best, is what I've found. And that's so fun because they grow in a way that they never would have, rather than someone kind of doing what they've always done and maybe getting a little better at it. But I don't cease to be amazed. And one in particular who was maybe one of the most unlikely is now on staff with us, because she just kept growing and growing and surprising us. And it's just delightful when that happens, and that's who we want to be, and that's what we want to offer people. So I hope that speaks to your question.
No, absolutely it does, Sarah. I've been in similar situations and worked with a lot of people over my years, and I have I've met with some people, and I've I thought, yeah, I'm not quite sure if this person is ready yet or if they're going to make it. And years later, they turn into employees and some of the best mentors out there that a person could want or a person could have. A lot of us with lived experience in the recovery field and the recovery world have came from absolutely nothing and gone on to wonderful places in life and been able to continue to mentor people. So I firmly agree with you there and can relate to where you're coming from. Travis, my next question is, I'll start with you. Travis, what are some of the drawbacks organizationally you may have run into when hiring peers, perhaps too early?
You know, it's interesting. We always kind of talk about, you know, I'm a baseball fan, so we usually talk about, you know, when I'm meeting with my general manager who's working, you know, with me every day in the houses. We often talk about what's the bullpen look like. You know, I mean, you know, who's doing well, what are the issues that we're running into. We always want to have the next 2 or 3 people kind of, you know, at least from an outside perspective, kind of ready to go. From a house manager standpoint, you know, it's I can use one example. The very first house manager I had was a great guy, you know, became a friend of mine, put him in a position to do the job, you know, and it was hard because towards the end of, you know, his tenure, about 8 months to a year, I kept having, you know, coaching moments with him, like, hey, you've got to be, you know, practicing what you're preaching around the place. And you know, he was letting some certain things kind of slide, and we had to have a really conversation, you know, tough conversation where I ended up having to remove him. And it was, you know, I put that on myself as much as I put that on him. You know, I probably put him in a position to not be successful because he, you know, this is my first house that I had opened. I was, you know, I didn't know my head from my tail on just about anything. And it was a lot for him to take on. So I think having that time to develop your residents and as, you know, from a management position and letting that happen organically over time has really helped. So, you know, we really look to have conversations with people 3 or 4 months in if we're seeing certain things, you know, from a recovery standpoint that we're doing or the way that they interact with people. But I think, you know, the biggest hiccup for me has been putting some people in a position where they just didn't have enough time under their belt or didn't have enough skills yet to deal with issues and problems. And you know, like I said, I blame myself more than the individual on those things. But now looking back on it, you know, the way that we've got things established with kind of a, you know, two manager system in the properties, we've been a lot more successful in having people being able to naturally transition from one role to the next and having that next person in line. So just takes time. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's kind of my feedback.
No, absolutely, Travis, and it's all very valuable insight. Steve, in your experience in doing this and bringing on a few peer leaders and house managers, what have been some of the drawbacks and some of the stuff that you've had to overcome, either organizationally or with that person, that specific peer leader as a whole?
Well, we've been fortunate enough to where we haven't had any major issues in that aspect. The only issue we've had in that aspect is we get somebody into that position and then they decide 2 weeks later or 30 days later they're transitioning out. So then we got to move somebody else into that position. But the way we've been doing it, it really helps with our peer leaders we have in place. They really work well with the other guys, and what they're doing is they're kind of bringing these guys up at the same time as we're talking with them, meeting with them. We're staffed here. I'm on site pretty much majority of the day. Then Tom is on site with us full time. So staff's always here. You know, we're always seeing people, talking to people. So it goes really well with how we do it here with our leadership, and it helps us really bring people into that fold. We just started kind of an assistant to the house manager thing. We're doing a trial run where we're having a couple other residents take the part of checking bedrooms and things like that, and facilitating that part to alleviate a little bit from the house manager. And that seems to be helping even more. And it's going to help us I think it's going to help us raise up more leadership potential for our homes. And so when our house managers do transition out, we'll have that another person kind of fall right in place there.
Thank you, Steve. Sarah, my next question kind of transitions from the last. Within each of your housing models, do you guys have term limits, perhaps for the peer mentors or for any other positions in your house? And if so, when you're starting to get close to those term limits, what does it look like when it's getting time to replace someone?
So for our early recovery homes, we have a term limit for the program. And so that sort of serves as a term limit for the position, because they normally wouldn't come on with us until they're at least halfway through. And so they would just kind of age out when they graduate. And it's a natural time for them to transition out. So I would say most frequently people who are house assistants with us are in that position until they graduate. And just, I guess in addition to that, just if the need comes to remove somebody, that it's always been a process. It's not, nobody's getting surprised by that, but it's because we've gone through our process that we go through with all of our residents in terms of verbal wordings and really trying to encourage and mentor in a different direction. And if it's not sticking, or if they themselves are just not in compliance, they can't be holding people accountable to something that they're not doing themselves. And so they really determine their own destiny in that way, just by what level of engagement and stepping up, and just the integrity that they bring to the position. So and just a quick word on the bringing someone in too early. I've just found that I would rather not have a house assistant for a season and allow there to be like really flat leadership. And, people our senior members are UAing each other or UAing the folks after overnights, but we don't have a house assistant for a season. And it's a chance for people to sort of like kind of rise to the occasion. So, or be thinking if they would like to, but there are times when we just think nobody's ready. And I would rather have them negotiate like a different style of being together in the house with mutual accountability than I would rather put someone in that I just don't feel good about. So we do sometimes wait until we feel good about the pool of potential applicants, because we feel like we're setting them and the community at large up for success in a way that maybe wouldn't always be the case.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Steve, within your housing organization there, do you have term limits? Do you have term limits there? The length of time that somebody might be in one of your newer homes or your graduate homes? What does that look like for you guys in your organization?
It's very similar to what Sarah's describing. We have a term limit on, of the program itself, and anybody that's in leadership, we stick with that same process. So if they come in and 3-4 months into it, and they've come into a leadership role, that term limit still exists of the 9 to 14 months, and we kind of stick with that. And as they're transitioning out, getting close to transition, we lean towards them. Hey, do you have any suggestions who would be a good fit to fill your role? And then we, as staff, we look at that and then move into that itself. But we kind of stick to that program term limit.
Thank you, Steve. My final question here, I'm gonna I'm going to jump around. Definitely. I think all of your input with this is going to be great. Travis, I'm going to start with you. Travis, a two-part question. What does the training curriculum and training look like for your peer leaders? And what are some of the things that you clearly identify for them to do in their role, and some of the things perhaps that they need to refer on to you as the director of the program?
Yeah, great question. I think, I guess from a training standpoint, really the first part of that is we basically have a job description. I've got a playbook with a written job description, intake, discharge, policies, house meeting formats. So there's a tangible booklet for them to have as coming into a new management position with us. We don't want them to be any surprises about what their responsibilities are or what they're not. So we literally have it's nothing fancy. I created on a couple Word documents, but it basically lays out exactly what they're responsible for, what we're responsible to them for, what each position has, how we do an intake process, how we do a discharge process, how we manage a house meeting, how we assign chore. I mean, everything's kind of broken down, and that's really the biggest part of our training is reviewing that handbook with each of these peer resident managers to make sure that they have a firm understanding of that piece. It's been talked about by Steve and Sarah here. I can teach how to, do an Excel VLOOKUP to somebody or get onto email and have those things. But the intangible pieces of service oriented, going to a lot of meetings, working a job, those are the important things. And I'll teach the rest of that stuff with them. Couple things that is important for me is, communication when it comes to, with unfortunate things like having to do a discharge on somebody over a relapse. We really want to walk through that process with that manager, especially when they're new. They shouldn't do it alone. They need to have a little bit of support there with them. How are we going to treat that resident? We want to make sure that resident's feeling, that this thing's happened. Recovery is a journey. There's no hard feelings. It's not done in a confrontational way. So we've built all that into our training program, and I can share if anyone wants any of that stuff. Feel free to email me, and I can send over kind of any of those documents. But that's the big piece of it. I think the one thing that I don't have, a couple things that I don't have them do. I don't have them write receipts for any rent paid. That needs to be done through myself or the general manager. We handle the accounting piece of it. Discharges need to be, we need to have conversations. It's a 3-person conversation. It's me, my general manager, and the house manager or assistant house manager for that. And then any new rules or policies that want to be created within the house, either from the residents, we just want to bounce those off each other. We definitely want to have a little bit of that democracy that Oxford is so well known for. But at the same time, our preferred management style is a kind of a centralized leadership role within the houses of a couple people. Where those kind of final decisions are being made. But yeah, that's really it. I mean, like I said, the biggest thing for me is training, job descriptions, basically giving them the playbook to how to do this. So we're all aligned on the same page.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Travis. Steve, I'll same question back to you. Within your housing organization there, what kind of trainings do your peers receive? And again, what are some of the conversations that you have with them that, hey, perhaps this is going to be your responsibility, this is going to be your roles, but if X, Y, and Z come up, please refer them to me, the program director, or perhaps the founder in some cases.
Very similar to what Travis is talking about. There's some things we have them do within our leadership. We have them doing the UAs and chores and things like that. When it comes to like paying rent or dealing with discharging, things like that, that's a staff thing. But we do take into consideration what the residents are thinking and what their thoughts are in the process on it. We just don't, because sometimes the leader might have a problem with one of the guys because they don't like because they didn't do their chore or not the right way or something, and think they must leave, and it's not the case. So there's certain parameters there that we work in. But as far as training, it's they meet with us and we talk about what our expectations are and what we want them to be able to handle, and how we want them to handle things, and just kind of encourage them and love on them and show them the ropes on that, and then let them know that if this comes up or this comes up, one, we need to know right away. Two, you don't make a decision on that stuff. Bring it to us so that us as staff, you as leadership member, and then the resident can all sit down and talk about the situation and see where we can rectify the situation or the next decision or what's next happen. That way it's a consensus of everybody involved rather than the staff being heavy hand all the time. It's more of the community as a whole really helping with the decision making there on some of these things.
All very good. And again, Sarah, what is some of the training that your peers receive? What are some of the stuff that you want to be sure that they have a firm grasp on before you, what I want to say, allow them into a peer role? And again, what are some of the finer points that you're sure to share with your peers as, okay, this is within the scope of your job, but if, I don't know if it's perhaps disruptive behavior issues, some of the residents there in the program may not be following the rules in the book. What are in your handbook? What are some of the stuffs that again, the training that you do, and what is some of the stuff that you clearly define in their role is, okay, you're going to be responsible for this and you can handle X, Y, and Z. But if some other issues come up, that stuff, we need to sit down and have a meeting, or more of that stuff needs to be directed towards us.
Sure. So I haven't mentioned a lot about conflict, but we really see conflict as such a profound opportunity to grow in being part of this program, and that it comes up, it's inevitable. And so what people do in those the heat of the moment, which sometimes staff's around for it, again, sometimes staff isn't, and by extension, what the house assistant is able to provide to some of those times when things are most tense, or when someone comes to them with an issue. I'll just read right out of the responsibilities. One of the things that we say is that they are responsible to assist residents in resolving conflicts, but they communicate with staff about unresolved conflicts or issues that cannot be resolved in house meetings. So again, kind of helping them discern what they need to take on and what they don't need to take on, that they can be sort of the first line of defense, so to speak. And sometimes I mean, so helping them cultivate that kind of unbiased question asking of two parties, and sometimes they're incredibly gifted in helping each other hear each other and work something out, and staff doesn't need to get involved, and they just tell us about it later, like, hey, there was this thing, but we're good now. But sometimes it's saying, oh, this got tricky and I'm not sure what to do with it, so I just asked everybody to kind of take a break and cool off, and that we need to kind of come back around to it. So I think it's really important that there be confidentiality kind of on multiple levels, that we can trust the house assistant with giving them special information sometimes about their peers, because sometimes there's a mental health issue going on and we're like, hey, would you help us keep an eye on this? If they do this or this, it's a red flag for us, and we need to be in the loop. But they also need to be trustworthy with their peers, so that people can feel like they can come to them, so people aren't trying to hide stuff from them. But there's always, I find, not always, but frequently, just the whole snitch culture, where it's like you don't tell on people and whatever. Like something the house assistants have to do is they have to tell on their friends sometimes. And so we address that in the interview. Like, how do you feel about needing to kind of, and how can that be done with integrity? Like, it's not betraying somebody, but it's helping them learn how to negotiate being in a dual role that can be complicated, because they are equals and they are in a leadership position at the same time. They're working the same program as the person next to them, and yet they also have these extra responsibilities. And sometimes that gets complicated. Sometimes resentments get built, especially if they wield their power in a way that's unhelpful. But the opportunity to work through conflicts, whether it's because someone's frustrated with the house assistant or the house assistant is just trying to help other people get through stuff. We use a lot of nonviolent communication tools. Marshall Rosenberg's work as the foundation for really helping people learn how to talk to each other in a way that doesn't include accusation, name calling, all the things that incite people and stir the pot. And really helps people hear each other, see each other, and come to a common understanding of really, we all essentially want the same things, but we're getting in each other's way trying to get there. And so how can we, instead of, being in a position to like push each other aside to get what we want, how can we actually partner together? How can we be shoulder to shoulder instead of coming at each other, and on the flip side, not be co-signing with each other behind the leadership's back, but really cultivating just that openness that allows people to grow, build trust. And when you're building trust, good things happen. So.
Very good, Sarah. Yeah, in my experience in working in the housing field, and I think to sum up a lot of what you guys have talked about, in a good peer leader, you want to find somebody who can speak on the positives and share their experience, strength, and hope. I've always found in working with the houses that I work with in times of conflict and unsteadiness, unsettling things in the house, that meetings and bringing everybody together works real good. 9 times out of 10, the members in your homes that you're working with, they already know the answer to the question and how to move forward in a positive way. It's just by sometimes sitting down and offering a little bit of experience, strength, and hope, it helps them realize that they already do know the answer, and they can share it with the rest of the individuals that they live with. One other question that came to mind for me that I think may be helpful to some of our participants here. What are some of the benefits that come along with being the peer leader in the home? Such as, are these, and this is a question that I have, are these positions compensated in any way? Do they get free room and board? What does that look like within each of your organizations? And Travis, again, I'll start with you.
Yeah, real quick for us. So basically, it's for us, it's time commitment wise. Our house manager, I think, really all in that job. Anywhere between 5 and 7 hours a week. So generally, they have a discounted rent with us. And then our assistant managers also have a discounted rent, and we expect that position to be about 2 to 3 hours a week of actual, work itself. And so they get a little bit of a smaller discount on rent. And those are how we compensate. And then obviously, if there's any training involved in the lock zone training, which is incredibly important for us, recovery coach training, any of these things that they express interest or we're interested in them doing, we pay for all that stuff.
Awesome. And Steve, within your housing model, what are the benefits of that a peer leader receives there within your housing model?
Very similar to what Travis is saying. Our house managers get a little bit of a rent break. But if they like, we've had one that went to some peer counseling training that we paid for. Anything like that, we want to compensate them for and pay for because they're doing that on the behalf of themselves, but also our organization. But I think what I hear from most of them, the benefit they get that they love the most is being able to be there and learn how to participate in other people's lives in a manner of helping them. One of my house managers, his favorite thing to do is to sit down with each one of the residents each week. He has a little house meeting he does, and they sit down and they just talk to each other about the recovery and how their life is, what they're struggling with. And he loves that part of it. He looks forward to that part of the day every week, and that's something I'm looking at transitioning to in other homes and making that kind of part of the week for them also.
Thank you, Steve. And Sarah, within your housing organization and your housing model, what are some of the benefits that are offered to your peer leaders?
We are built on a double occupancy room model. And when you become a house assistant, you get your own room, which is real attractive to some people. Some people will just shamelessly say, I'm in it for the room. And it's like, oh, that's okay. It's okay to want your own room. But that's the big thing for some folks. They get their own room and bathroom. And it's actually, in this house, it's a separate part of the house. It's like a little apartment, not with a kitchen or anything like that, but you got your own space. And once you've been living in community for a while, sometimes that's a real gift. But it also creates a space that they can invite people into. There's 2 chairs in there, so they can invite people to come in and hang out with them and kind of be hospitable in their own way. The other thing is that each person already gets a night out a week, but for the house assistant, they get an extra night out every month. So just another perk, another get out, do something you want to do. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't, but just knowing that it's there. And then we also talk about just the future kind of benefits. Like a position like this can go on a resume. We will write you letters of reference and make recommendations to you. And this is developing you. And we will sing your praises to anyone who wants to listen, particularly as they move out into the community and want to, be employable. And sometimes they have charges and other things that are following them that make them not so attractive. And we want to just continue to build the list of why they're some of the very best people to be employing in our communities and some of the very best people to have on the front lines of just being alongside people, because no one knows how to serve like a humble person in recovery. And so those are some of our highlights.
Awesome, Sarah. I thank you. I'm going to jump over to my question and answers here. If any of the participants at all, if you guys have any questions at all of any of our panelists today, go ahead and type them in the question and answer section there. Our first question comes from Arissa. I'm excited to be part of this meeting today. I'm the director from the Shove House, a program of Okanagan Behavioral Health Care. I've been struggling with locating relevant curriculum for our daily groups. Do you have any advice on where I can look? Travis, I'll start with you.
I have to be, for us, just to be completely transparent, we're not a treatment center. I don't offer counseling services, so it's a very fine line to walk. From what I've always done with our organization, and I'm sure Sarah and Steve do this too, is we have really strong partnerships in the community with either mental health services, treatment facilities, outpatient programs, and we've relied heavily on those to do some of those curriculums and things like that. Now, one thing that we do is we do have guest speakers in at least once a month at all the properties. These will either be employers that are, seeking out new employees, people in long-term recovery, people from services, people from outside services, whether it's, Carnegie Center, which does driver's licenses. We've had people come in who help out with job resumes. I mean, we just try to keep that fresh on a monthly basis and getting someone into those houses. But from a day-to-day thing, what we have done from a program perspective is we do have 12-step meetings that are peer driven in the home.
Thank you, Travis. Steve, do you have any advice on where she can look for curriculum, perhaps some of the curriculum that you guys do within your house? I should have asked this at the very beginning, and I apologize. Sarah, Steve, and Travis, if you guys could all put some contact information up in the chat, and then after this meeting, if individuals need to or want to reach out with more questions, they have a way to reach out to all of you. But Steve, jumping back to you, do you have any advice on where she may be able to look for a curriculum? Is there some stuff on your website that you guys share, or is there some stuff that you may be able to share with her?
As far as curriculum for us, we lean more towards faith-based. So we use what is called the Genesis process here, which is a relapse prevention that we have a class on here that everybody works on one-on-one with the staff coach, also as a group on Tuesday nights. That's been, for us, been very beneficial for the residents. It's really helped them a lot. And then we have a couple classes throughout the week based off that stuff, off the Genesis process, with like the Red Dog, Blue Dog class, things like that we utilize. But outside services, similar to that Travis is talking about, we got a really good connection with the outpatient centers and local to us, and different funding providers and things like that. But I'd be more than happy to put my information out there so anybody can reach out to me, and I can, answer any questions you might have and give them information that might be beneficial to them.
Thank you, Steve. Sarah, this next question is for you. How do you prep folks for success when they exit the treatment of a treatment facility and are entering back into the world? Do you have follow-up plans? Do you have follow-up plans or plans that go with them?
So just to clarify, we're not a treatment facility. We're supportive residents, but I think I know what you mean. We are definitely in phase 3 of our 3-phase program. After they've gone through a lot of their own healing and really we use the Genesis process as well. So they've identified a lot of their coping behaviors that lead to relapse. They've developed a team of people around them who also know their patterns that can lead to relapse. And so it's designed, that curriculum, to help people catch a relapse before it happens, between your own level of self-knowledge that's come through looking at your story through a lens that maybe you never have before, as well as inviting people to be close enough up with you and have permission to say, oh, hey, I see you doing one of those things that you do when you're on your way, when you're sliding. That when people have that level of trust and accountability and permission to do that, that's the best thing that they have, setting them up going forward to help prevent a relapse if they're continuing to work a program of recovery. And so, but like I was saying, in phase 3 of the program, it's all about transition. We don't want them to feel like they're getting kicked to the curb on the last day because, they didn't prepare or something. So in our weekly meetings with those with our residents, or whether it's the house assistant, we are doing our best to really ask questions to help them anticipate, like, what is it that could come up? What's going to be challenging, and how could we start working on that? How could you start working on it with our support, is what I mean. And so just that, from housing, which is often a huge kicker, to just having stable relationships, that the experience of community is going to continue. But we also really talk to people about how once you're in the New Earth Recovery family, you're always in the New Earth Recovery family, and that we belong to each other. And so we have had people come back and repeat our program because they feel like they didn't get everything they could have gotten the first time, and they're humbly asking for another chance. And we've done that. We also seek to make ourselves available, but kind of put the ball in their court when it comes to if they would like to stay connected to us. Often it's kind of like sending a kid off to college or something. They think they're going to stay connected, and then they go off and they're in a new season of life, and they don't stay as connected as they think they're going to. But sometimes they come back around, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. And it's just different for everybody. So we really try to keep the door open to relationship, but it's different for different folks. And like one person just said, can we meet monthly for a while after I leave? And I was like, sure, you just be the one to reach out and we'll put it on the calendar. So allowing them to show some initiative and honor their own choosing in that in an ongoing way. But yeah, we're here. We're not going anywhere. And that's important for them to know that we're here if we need them.
Thank you, Sarah. Travis, what does some of your guys' discharge planning look like when a person is ready to, we'll say, transition back out into the real world? And what is some of your follow-up plans look like?
Yeah, so, generally speaking, from when we kind of get that 30-day notice, it's a lot of this is kind of cooked into the beginning. We want to have conversations about, budgets, how to make a budget, saving money up, what does first and last month's rent look like? What do your monthly expenses look like? So that a lot of that's kind of front loaded into the, after they get settled in, those kind of things. From a follow-up standpoint, to be completely transparent, it's challenging. A lot of these people are gone. They're doing life. They're back with their significant others. Their kids are back in their house. We were at a small period of their life where they were able to get back on track and do some of those things. We've had guys in women and men, similar to Sarah said, but generally that does need to be with them. I try to do one thing I do try to do is no matter the circumstances, I have a exit survey. Honestly, it goes out via email. I maybe get 1 out of 10 to actually respond to the survey itself, but we try to get some feedback that way. That's kind of it, but we try to basically is, we preach having, 3 months of expenses saved up by the time you leave, because most of our people are on some sort of voucher system or financial support. So we talk about, the importance of budgeting, having some money ready, and then an exit survey, positive or negative, and hope to get some of those back.
Very good. Thank you, Travis. Steve, what is some of the stuff that's incorporated into your discharge planning that you work with your residents on? And then do you guys have anything set up for follow-up that you do with them after they exit from your program?
We have what we use called an exit plan, and we give them usually about 60 days after moving in here. An exit plan is basically things they got to work on to be able to transition out here in a successful way. One of those things is building a budget and learning how to live on a budget. And we call it more of a realistic budget. They're paying what they pay here, and they're working, and then saying, oh, they're still broke because they're out buying a pair of shoes or 2 pairs of shoes every other day or whatever. So it's learning how to hold on to your money, budget your money, put money away so that they have that nest egg. So when they do transition out, they have that money for the first and last deposit, and probably got to buy a couch or things like that. So it's really working with them on that. So it's part of the program we do here is what we do is work with them a budget. And it's like Travis was saying, it's kind of hard sometimes because they get money, they want to go buy things. And it's, you know, dealing with addicts and alcoholics who haven't had money for a while. Now they have money. So I need shoes, or I need this, or I want that. And so it's really working with them on that. And the wonderful thing we have here is we have a meeting hall on site that has NA and AA meetings held in it. So a lot of our residents, after they transition out, come back on a weekly basis to the meetings still, participate in those. And we also have what we call peer panel, which is 3 or 4 former residents who come and meet with our residents and talk to them and encourage them and help them with what they're struggling with and help them walk through things. And that's been very beneficial. We have one gentleman that transitioned out about 5 years ago, and he still comes back twice a month just to talk to our current residents and love on them. And he's actually sponsoring quite a few of our residents now.
Awesome, thank you, Steve. From our participants, do any of you have any other questions today that any of our panelists may be able to answer? Well, as I see no other questions popping up here, I want to thank all 3 of our panelists, Steve, Sarah, and Travis. All of you offered some very valuable insight. It's been a learning experience, not only from our participants, but for me as a whole. You guys are doing wonderful things within all of your housing organizations, all of your organizations. Very blessed to have all 3 of you, and I thank you for the work that you continue to do. For all of you and our participants, in November, WAQRR is going to be hosting a 2-day, right now we're unsure if it's going to be in person or via Zoom due to all of the COVID stuff that's going on out there. But either way, in November, we're going to be holding a 2-day peer leader training. And during that training, we're going to really dive into what it takes to bring on and train a good peer leader to assist you in your organizations. More updates on that, more information as this develops will be posted on our WAQRR page. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank all of you participants for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this. Again, this recording will be posted here within the next couple days up on the WAQRR page. And here in the contacts, all of the contact information for all our panelists have been posted. Again, thank you all. Stay safe, be well, and look forward to seeing you all in the future on our further webinars that we have. Take care.